We all love a great comeback story, and our guest today is one of the best that I've ever met. Being a couple £100 overweight, with 20 some dollars in a bank account on top of 50K in credit card debt, single, pre-diabetic with high blood pressure, was rock bottom. And today we hear the story of turning every little bit of that around by focusing on wellness and sharing the journey along the way. Today he's a father, husband, incredibly successful content creator, and advocate for fighting obesity with fitness and lifestyle shifts. Arnold Schwarzenegger even became one of his biggest supporters. We talk about finding the confidence to keep going, the practical steps that he took, and what it's been like to grow a large social media following along the way, which certainly wasn't planned. I hate to say it's a rags to riches hero's journey kind of story, because I know that he's been a beautiful person from day one, but it does have that Hollywood script kind of feel. Please welcome to interview 58, Dave Danna. First thing that I like to do when I hop on an episode with anyone is just say a huge thank you, because I know I'm always interviewing content creators and people who are maybe building a brand, building a business, but we all have lives either way and we're super busy. So first off, a huge thank you. And then secondly, I love to ask the question, who are you and what do you do? And I'll just tell you a reason why. And that's because on the internet, so often people define us, or something that we share becomes like our story in a very, very quick bite, which is what that reel or that YouTube short or something is supposed to do. But I love to hear from my interviewees themselves, like how they see themselves and how they define themselves in this world of content creation. So if you were to come into, let's say, a high school classroom, I was teaching entrepreneurship and content creation as a unit, and you came in just to kind of be a guest speaker. Who are you and what do you do?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. My journey to content creation and social media is a little bit abnormal, although I'm not sure if anyone's is normal at this point. But my name is Dave Danna, and I'm an accountant. That's my day job. And over the last few years, or maybe even over the last decade, I got up to over 400 pounds in weight. And especially with the pandemic and work from home, and I was in grad school at the time, so that went remote as well. So about a year ago in May of 2022, in May and June of 2022, I had a few moments that opened my eyes to the fact that I needed to make some changes in my lifestyle, my mental health, my physical health, financial health, spiritual health. And so I started a weight loss journey. And one of the things I did differently from all the other times I had started this weight loss journey, because if you're a guy who gets up over 400 pounds, you have attempted this journey before, was that I decided to document it on Instagram and on Twitter, just for myself, so that I couldn't lie to myself in the mirror, so that I could look back on scale pictures and gym selfies and make sure that I was making progress, or, change things if I wasn't seeing progress, and to do that under my own name. And after a couple of months, people started following me, and more people started following me. And so now, I don't really necessarily consider myself like a content creator, but in fact, that has been what it has become. And in the last 13 months, I've lost 118 pounds, which is really the goal. And I have another 90 or 100 to go. But I have come to social media and content creation through my health and my weight loss journey over the last 14 months. And prior to that, I really didn't do a whole lot on social media. It has, a mixed reputation, let's say. And so it was something I didn't have time for. I was in grad school, I was working full time, and now it's something that's a wonderful positive in my life, which I never would have expected. And here we are talking about it.
And it's beautiful to me that you say it's a positive, because a lot of the work that I find myself doing, whether it's informally with friends or people that I'll meet through the internet, or a little more formally with some of the work that I do in my day job, it's like coaching people on the idea that there can be not just a silver lining, but an extremely positive side of social media, when there can be so much damn negative side as well. And your journey, if we can call it that, at least the amount that I know of, is super inspiring. and is definitely a big green flag on the positive side of social media. And that's how we got connected. I don't know if you have a PR firm or something, but the fact that your stuff is spreading really shows how infectious it is in a helpful way. And one thing, about five things you said there stood out, but one of them was that you said under my real name. You said publishing under my real name. So touch on that. Why did you say that specifically?
Well, there's a lot of anonymity, especially on Twitter, that I think drives a lot of the negativity. There's some positive to it as well, but it's a lot easier to say things you wouldn't normally say if you were not under your real name. And so it was important to me that I was authentic and that I was genuine and that I wasn't trying to portray a life that I wasn't leading or that I wasn't making statements that didn't reflect who I actually was. And because my journey, or what I planned on posting at the time, it wasn't really a journey, was weigh-in pictures and exercise stuff and gym selfies, it was already going to be me. So I wanted to make sure that my name was right there as well. And it was, again, the whole premise was accountability to myself. And if I'm going to try to be holding myself accountable, it needs to be my name. At least that's the way I thought about it. And that also meant my family would know about it, and my friends would know about it, my employer knows about it. And so, I don't have a manager or a PR firm or anything like that. And again, it was really just for me and close people so that I could hold myself accountable, so that others could hold me accountable. I had tried before, and, I come to the conclusion, that no man is an island, and that this time, hard as it is sometimes for men, I would have to ask for help and learn from other people. And part of that was going to be accountability in public under my real name.
Which is really incredible. And I definitely want to get to any of the mindset stuff that we can define, as hard as it will be, around how you were able to access that part of your brain that, and I guess body, because you got to tweak the thing, you got to use your thumbs too, but your ability to go and do that is one of those easier said than done things for sure. But before we kind of dive into that stuff, I'm interested a little bit about a couple of the things in terms of like what attracted me to your page and things like that, and seeing this work in the first place. And one of those things that you mentioned in terms of accountability and stuff like that, I'm sure there's long-term goals. One of your things on Twitter is that your banner says aspiring supermodel. And what's interesting is I feel like we could just use that as like a hub and spoke of this whole conversation, as funny as it is. But I ask first, like, is that something said in jest? Is that actually something that you aspire to be? And why did you make that your banner?
I think a lot of times in life in general, it's taken very seriously. And especially me being an accountant, that work is very focused. I'm dealing with a lot of big numbers. There's a lot of responsibility on my shoulders, and also dealing with health and wellness, physical and mental, very serious topics, very important topics. So I wanted to make sure that my journey was both a serious and very important thing that I'm doing. I consider it, saving my life in reality, but also that I enjoyed the journey and that I made sure it wasn't just about the destination. It wasn't just about the scale. It was also about learning. It was also about enjoying the journey. And it was also about, making sure that others saw that there is this side of me that is not hyper focused on numbers, hyper addicted to the scale. Obviously, the scale is very important. My blood work's very important. All this other stuff is very important. But, I need to lose over 200 pounds, to get down to a somewhat ideal weight, let's say. And that's not going to happen in a month. It's probably not going to happen in a year. Didn't happen in a year for me, right? So we're looking at a 2 to 3 year journey. And I want to make sure it's not miserable, right? And so, is it something that I actually aspire toward? It would be crazy if that happened one day, but more so it's just to remind me every time I open Twitter and I see that banner to enjoy myself, to embrace the journey and to embrace things like learning how to cook, learning how to exercise, figuring out what I like and don't like on my diet, making sure that I wake up very early to go to the gym, before the sun rises. I make that as enjoyable as possible. And sure, it is a goal. It would be wonderful if it happened. It's not my primary goal, but So many people I see on weight loss and health journeys just are hyper focused on every day, what does the scale say? Every day, and I wanted to make sure that I had a reminder all the time that there's other stuff, there's more fun stuff, there's entertaining stuff that I can do on this journey, because it's not a short-term journey, right? It's a long-term journey, and it's a lifelong lifestyle change once I get there.
One of the reasons why I loved it is that I'm a big believer in sort of the cliche, like shoot for the moon and you'll land among the stars, like, you know, that kind of thing. But phrased another way by one of my mentors and heroes, Bob Goff, who basically creates all of his content around the idea of pursuing big dreams, which is a hard thing to sell in such a like niche business oriented social media space, right? He says the phrase, keep the moon in the window. And when you get in your rocket ship and you're flying towards that, you may or may not end up there. We don't know where you're going to end up. And some days will be harder than others. And you may have to take a step back, or you may have to change course, but you should always be able to peek out that window and see the moon. And so to me, that's that type of thing, is that sort of like aim, the place that you're headed towards, right? The scale's an interesting one. When you bring that up, I used to be a personal trainer. I spent the first few years of my professional life working with clients, probably 75% of them on weight loss journeys, and the other 25% athletes wanting to compete in a sport. And one of the things that I would do is throw out the scale for some people. And I think one of the important things that definitely runs true for all of us, no matter our goals, is that it's an individual way to deal with things. Now, because in your case, you had such a huge goal to overcome, obviously using that scale can be a really good and healthy metric for a while. The reason I bring that up is because I was actually speaking with someone the other day who was talking about weight and diet and wanting to be healthier. And they were making a comment at me because genetically I'm more trim and fit, like by appearance. But throughout both sides of my family, genetically, there's been a ton of heart disease as early as in our 40s from almost all of my relatives in the generation just beyond me. So I don't think only, you know, physical appearance can define kind of our overall health. The reason I say that is that you mentioned the fact that no man is an island and that we all have our own goals and things that we're working towards. And I just thought that was an important point to kind of, you know, double click on, so to speak. When you mentioned the idea of keeping it fun, and so that aspiring supermodel thing, keeping it fun, that's another thing that is very much true in your content. Like, you know, wearing certain outfits to the gym, taking the gym selfies, you have a really good ability to tell stories. But yeah, of course, I'm sure it wasn't easy to go from not being a content creator to having fun as a content creator. So where do you find yourself if this was like a 3-act story as a content creator? Where do you find yourself now, and how did you work up the courage to start creating fun stuff?
I would say I'm probably still in the first act. If I had to put it on 3 acts, you know, I'm maybe halfway through my weight loss, maybe a little bit more. But even when I get to my goal weight, then I'd like to work on building muscle, make sure my blood work's in line right, and make sure I can maintain it, of course, and then it turns into sort of a lifelong lifestyle. And so in terms of content creation, I am an optimist by nature, and I tend to have like a sort of a fun, lighthearted side. So I wanted to make sure when I started posting that it wasn't these like negative, I'm forcing myself to go to the gym at 4:30 in the morning and it's horrible. I wanted to make it be like, no, I made a positive lifestyle change. I'm waking up early. I'm going to bed early. I'm doing this for me. I'm going to feel good afterwards. So, you know, I try to wear fun socks to the gym every morning. If it's a holiday, I wear a holiday outfit. If it's my birthday, I wear a birthday outfit. I graduated from grad school and I wore a suit to the gym that day. You know, I try to make it fun for me, and then it's fun for when I post it. And I'm not an expert. I don't have a manager, and I didn't really do content creation before this. So it's been purely organic, and I can't exactly tell you why it's resonating, but perhaps that is in and of itself, why it's resonating. And in terms of like my arc as a content creator, for whatever reason, it's taken off more on Twitter, or whatever Twitter is now called, and somewhat on Instagram. Yeah, exactly. Somewhat on Instagram as well. So I'm trying now to like branch into figuring out how to do video, how to be more comfortable on camera. When I was over 400 pounds, I certainly wasn't comfortable, as you mentioned, on a video camera, and just getting the nerve to do those 5 a week gym selfies was pretty much the max I could do at that point in time. And I really could only do that because I felt like I had reached a point in my life where I needed to make some drastic changes right now. I had just turned 30. I just bought a house. I just got promoted. I was about to graduate from grad school. There were all these things in my life that were coming together, and I needed to make those changes, and I knew it was going to be tough, but I thought I just need to take that first step. And, it can't be worse than the other attempts I had made at weight loss, because those hadn't worked. So trying something drastically different and drastically more positive and more fun, both for me and for other people, was, if I can say I have a strategy, that was about all the strategy that I did have at the beginning. And then, once I had lost the first 40 or 50 pounds, I felt a little bit more comfortable on video, and I started making videos. But honestly, the video content, I'm not an editor. I really don't know what I'm doing. And I didn't really do any of these short videos for TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, prior to 6 months ago. So that is sort of where the content and the journey is. I think I've mastered sort of the text and picture stuff, and I'd like to get better at the video stuff, maybe the second half of this year, or, maybe even into next year. But it definitely a learning experience in and of itself. The social media and content creation has been its own unexpected journey.
I'm smiling because when you said TikTok, it reminded me of the split screen that you posted with the like song.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's one of the things, just trying different things. You know what I mean? Having fun, trying different things, and seeing what works and what doesn't, what I like and what I don't like.
Yeah. For the longest time on all socials, that's the handle that I use, Just Tries. And then I was starting to kind of spread myself too thin with all the different things that I was creating when the podcast was really, for me, the focus. And so I don't hammer that point home as much about going around and trying things, but it's definitely a big part of what I believe in and stand for. And yeah, that particular video really stood out because that was kind of like another way that I can phrase this question is, what do you think it was that gave you the bravery and that you were able to work up? Because there's a lot of people who see that content too, and not that it's having a detrimental effect. There's no way it could have a real negative effect, but they'll see it. They want to start their weight loss journey, and they're like, how the hell can this guy go dance on TikTok with this girl in a bikini and post this awesome video?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
When, like, again, I'm still scared to kind of create that selfie. So maybe you answered it already, but does anything else come to mind for those sitting at home thinking of starting?
Well, one thing I would say if you are thinking of starting is, I spent a lot of time in my 20s, not just with content creation, but also with the weight loss and the health journey, waiting to feel ready and waiting for those nerves to go away. And they never fully did, and they still fully don't. Every morning I'm a little nervous when I, post that selfie. Like, what if people think I'm bigger, right? What if I don't look good, right? It's 4:45 in the morning. Like, I know I don't look great, right? And so one of the things that has been a learning curve in and of itself for me over the last 12, 14 months is doing it even when you're nervous is where I've seen the most growth. That, getting out of my comfort zone is where I have grown. And that's with posting stuff, especially on TikTok. I'm way too old for that demographic where I'm 31. I grew up with Facebook sort of, and that was like pretty much it. And so posting like that sort of like that weird dancing video that went super viral with that e-girl, or I don't even know who she is, to be honest. But like, it's way out of my comfort zone. I'm at least a decade too old for it. But I just went ahead and did it, and I felt awkward, and I felt, a little bit wrong, and I don't know, it has 20,000 views or something, and it was great, and people talk about it, and it's one of the most fun videos I have done. But I didn't feel 100% confident when I was pushing the post button, especially because I cross-posted to a number of other platforms, and that's the same thing with when I first walked into the gym at over 400 pounds, having never entered a gym before, not knowing how to do anything. Or I post some cooking videos and I don't know how to cook, right? I have no idea. And so there's all these people, everybody has an opinion on food, right? Because everybody eats. And all the time I'm like, did I do it right? I don't know. But I mean, I post a food picture on Twitter almost every day. And every time I think to myself, did I screw this food up? Am I going to get like a ton of judgment? And instead, I've had chefs who've been on the Food Network reach out, give me their cell phone numbers, be like, hey, like, you know what? You did kind of screw that up. But next time you give me a call and we'll walk through it. And it made huge improvement, right? And again, it's been 99% plus positive. So one of the things I'm trying to implement in all the rest of my life is attempting to be more comfortable in situations where I know I'm going to be uncomfortable, and recognizing that that is where I grow as a person, and that it's okay to spend some time, in that uncomfortable zone. As long as I do see the growth and the progress, and my cooking has improved, and I do feel more confident. I'm not completely posting those gym selfies, and I have lost weight and generally improved in my health. But at the beginning, it was very hard. I'm not sure if it's imposter syndrome or something else, but I completely understand if you're thinking about starting or going to start, that it can be incredibly intimidating, content creation or weight loss. And if I had to go back and tell 400 plus pound Dave something, it would just be that pretty much everyone wants you to succeed, right? The gym bros want you to succeed. The chefs want you to succeed. Pretty much everyone I met on social media, even though it has the reputation it does, wants me to succeed. And in my version of success, because I don't have a strategy or a guy telling me what works and what doesn't work, is just to try different things. And sometimes it's a TikTok dancing video, and sometimes it's a picture of a steak, and sometimes it's a picture of me, doing a bench press that for whatever reason Arnold Schwarzenegger retweets and talks about. Right? It's just all sorts of different stuff, and I just try it on different platforms. And I understand that from that uncomfort comes growth, and comes confidence over time. But it does take a little bit of time. That is for sure the truth.
Yeah, I've posted a solo episode before about the chicken and the egg between confidence and creating, and how I don't even think it's a chicken and an egg equation. It's more just like this flywheel circle of back and forthedness that's a huge mess.
For sure. And every time I jump on a new, like Threads just came out, or whatever the Instagram, Twitter is, I jumped on that. Nobody knows what they're doing. I'm nervous every time I post over there, because it's like, do I just, it's every audience is a little different. Every place is a little different. And also, on Twitter, a lot more people know me than on YouTube or Instagram. And, I try to just stay positive. Some platforms, a million people see a post, and some platforms 50 people see a post. But for me, it's about learning, it's about growing, and again, it's about health and weight loss, right? So every platform and every piece of content is its own journey, is its own learning experience, and hopefully helps me get more healthy mentally, physically, right? Even if nobody likes the food pictures and the chef reaches out and tells me I did it wrong, I tried it, I posted it, I ate it, I'll do it again, and I'll do it again after that. And I think that consistency and continuing to show up, again, I'm really not a social media expert, but I do think that, as with a lot of things in life, consistency, showing up, and trying different things, a little bit of trial and error, it's been incredibly beneficial, at least in terms of the weight loss and I guess the social media as well, right? I definitely can't complain.
And you mentioned Arnold. I was going to ask, because I have to. I think that's another one of your, again, if you did have a PR firm, they'd be using that for sure. So, especially with the timing of the documentary coming out and all that, like, to see Arnold commenting on your stuff, like, what was that experience like?
It was mind-blowing. So what happened was, for the very first time, I did a bench press. And I didn't lift anything heavy, and it wasn't impressive, and my technique and my form was bad. And I think I only put up a video of one rep, and it was maybe 4 seconds long. And then the next morning, Arnold Schwarzenegger had not only retweeted me, but he wrote this long thread saying he was proud of me and giving me tips on form and all this stuff. And it was just completely mind blowing. I didn't tag him or anything. I don't know him, right? I've never met him. And it was just one of those things that reinforced to me that even though I don't have the biggest audience, even though my content's not that great, even though I don't know how to bench press, and at the time I was well over 300 pounds, right? This is the magic and the power and the positivity of social media and of content, where I didn't edit it. There wasn't any filters, or there wasn't anything fancy. It was just a 4 or 5 second clip of me doing one rep of like the bar with no weights on it, and so it gave a huge boost of positivity and confidence to me. And, it became this thing that I think back on when I post a bunch of content, it doesn't go anywhere, or I get on the scale once a week for Weigh In Wednesday and it doesn't say I've lost very much weight, right? Or I'm trying to get myself out of bed at 4:20 in the morning to go exercise, right? It's that those moments, like that moment where it's like, this is why people love social media so much, and this is why this journey is worth it, and this is what keeps me going in times when I might not quite have enough motivation, or I'm not really sure if this whole content thing is for me. It's just that these super mega stars who are busy filming documentaries and shows and whatever else he's doing will just reach out, and they can find you, and then just get lifting tips from the Terminator, which I never would have expected.
Yeah, it is really special. And it makes me think of some of the more technical in the weeds type stuff when it comes to creating a bit, though, especially in a gym, because it's not private either, right? So do you have someone that helps you? Do you have some workout buddies, or does your partner go with you, or are you just doing this all on your own?
So I'm lucky, I guess, in a way, because people ask that all the time. And again, the answer is I don't know what you're like supposed to do formally, except that I don't want to get on the wrong side of Joey Swole or whatever that guy is who calls people out for filming in the gym. But the Planet Fitness I go to opened last September. So that was right after I'd started my journey, and they took over a grocery store. So it's massive. And because it was so new, not a lot of people knew about it. And the other thing is, I've sort of mentioned this, but I get up at like 4 to 4:15 every weekday. So I'm at the gym between like 4:30 and 4:45. And there's this 20,000 square foot gym, and there's maybe 10 people there. So most of the time, my general rule of thumb is I try not to get anyone in the background of any of my pictures or my videos, just for their privacy, and I don't want to step on any toes. I don't do any filming or pictures in the locker room or anywhere like that. I stay just on the main floor. And if it's a little bit busier, I'll just film the next day, because I'm there 5 or 6 days a week, and I normally film 2 or 3 little clips when I am filming, and I only post on a workout clip on Instagram maybe every other day. So I don't need content every single day. And to answer your question, my fiance is not a fan of getting up that early with me on most days. So on the weekends, she'll go with me at a more normal time. And so then she will film stuff again if it's empty. And then I have a little collapsible tripod that really it's quite small. And I'll bring that with me on weekdays if I think that I want to film something. And at the moment, because Instagram and Facebook Reels and YouTube Shorts and whatever TikTok calls theirs, because they're vertical videos and they're just on a phone and they're like compressed and uploaded anyways, I just do it on my phone. I don't bring a fancy camera with me or anything, because I'm not sure how much that quality would be, increased anyways if it ends up being edited into like a clip that's less than 10 seconds long. But for a long time, I didn't film at all in the gym just because I was nervous and I didn't really know how. And now I'm way more confident. I'll just throw my little tripod down, do whatever. And again, it's one of those things where you're nervous beforehand, but at the end of the day, I was filming a leg press today, and I took 2 clips. They were each like 30 seconds long, and that was it, right? Like for the whole time period I was doing it in the gym was maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Maybe 1 or 2 people noticed it, and that was it. It's one of those things where it was intimidating to me beforehand, because I was like, gosh, I'm going to be the guy. I'm going to be the fat guy filming himself on the Planet Fitness. You know what I mean? But now that I've done it a few times, it's like, again, nobody's really watching you. As long as you're respectful, nobody really cares. And I only take 1 or 2 or 3 clips, 2 or 3 times a week. So most days I don't do anything except for a gym selfie. And most people probably don't realize this. We're just talking insider content stuff, but there's that massive wraparound mirrors. And if you look at my gym selfies, I'm in different places, and that's because I'm moving to try to make sure no one's behind me.
Yeah.
So, but again, the real key, I know this isn't, I I know this doesn't apply to everyone, but I live in small town rural America, and it's a really big Planet Fitness, and I go really early in the morning. And it's lucky that it's mostly pretty empty. And the 5 or 10 people who are there with me at 4:30, 5 a.m., they know me at this point, so they know what I'm doing.
Well, yeah, both the filmmaking and gym are kind of backgrounds of mine. Like I always was in the gym because I played football in university, and I have 2 DSLR cameras sitting right beside me here that I hardly ever use. So first off, I'll just make a note that when it comes to the content creation, phones are so powerful nowadays. I went down to a conference in Minnesota last year. I filmed every single thing of the vlog that I made with my phone, and it was like incredible, you know? So unless you were specifically trying to get cinematic shots as part of B-roll or something, or making a legit documentary, even then, I think you're probably fine with the phone. So that's a good thing to like focus on speed of creation, you know?
And the editing too. Yeah, the editing software has come miles from when I remember I was in like high school as well. I'm looking right now at my Sony, whatever it's called, because that's what I'm on. And it's the first time I think I've turned it on in a week. It just sits down here on a tripod. And it turns out all I use this high-end camera for is interviews, not actually the content that I put up, right? It's kind of crazy. And I use that CapCut software, which again, I just like found. And like, it's mind-blowing what you can do for free on your phone, like in the parking lot of the gym, right? It's great that, you know, I just started like throwing auto captions on my videos. I didn't realize you could just tap a button and it would just do that. It's just, you know, just the functionality from your phone is crazy. And I upload a lot of it in basically in real time. And so because I do, you know, work full time, and until May I was in grad school full time. So I you know, I can't spend 4, 5, 6 hours a day on content. It sort of has to be, you know, film or take the picture, and then if it's not uploaded within like an hour, I'm going to forget about it and have moved on and be busy with work. And, you know, so that's another thing that, you know, I'm not sure how other content creators do it, but for me, the technology has come so far and the rest of my life is so busy that it's sort of just a real time, like almost like a long-term reel of my life. And again, for whatever reason on Twitter specifically, but Instagram as well, people seem to be enjoying it.
It's definitely the way to do it. Like sometimes I'll film something that I'm like, oh, this would look good on an Instagram story or whatever. And because I did it in my actual camera reel, to your point, I just forget about it. Nobody ever sees it. It goes to die because, you know, I had long hair when I filmed it and now I don't. It's like delete. But I've worked towards wanting to get, you know, more and more efficient at that. So your ideas there are inspiring to me too. Sticking with the content creation piece for a sec, you mentioned that some people in your gym have started to get to know you. That was one of the things I was going to ask, not to fuel your ego, but because I think that's another thing that can be like a phase in this journey is people probably start to recognize you. They know that you're posting. Maybe they could outright be judgmental, or some people will just feel a little bit self-conscious. The reason I bring this up is, I guess, twofold. One, I was just going to ask, are people, because you're from that smaller town, starting to really recognize you? How have you dealt with that? And you mentioned that 99% of your experience with social media has been positive. What negative has existed, and kind of how do you deal with that?
So people in the gym, the 4 or 5 people, or I guess 5 to 10 people who are there that early do know me now. I'm not sure if they follow me on social media, but they definitely know that I'm there every morning, and they definitely see me filming. And so that is, so far, nothing like weird or bad has happened. That's been purely positive. And I've definitely gotten more conscious as more people see the content to try to make sure that they're not in it. And to be honest, I actually film less in the gym than I used to. In terms of like days per week, I used to try to film something every day, and that was impossible. And, you know, some days I didn't feel like it. Some days I just didn't have it. Sometimes I had a bad workout, right? And sometimes there were too many people there. And so now I film, you know, more like every other day, and I film more clips. And that's been the strategy. That when it started to happen, it's happened a few times, always in the small town, never elsewhere, is people will say hi to me or shout at me, you know, positively. But when I'm in the grocery store, actually the only place it's happened is in the grocery store, and it's repeatedly happened in the grocery store. And the first time I was just stunned. I probably looked like a deer in headlights, a fish out of water. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know what to say. Like, I looked a mess. I just run out to get like chicken because I was out, and like, I'm not even sure I responded. Like, I was probably very rude. And now I've sort of built up, like, I say hi, I respond, but at the same time, like, I don't know any of these people, and usually I have something, I'm trying to go somewhere, I'm trying to do something, or sometimes I'm with somebody. So it's a very interesting balancing act where I want to be supportive, I want to be positive. Like, sometimes they'll say like, really like emotional things about how like I've motivated or helped them, and like it's hard for me to respond honestly because I'm just trying to get chicken before my next work meeting, right? But the other thing I try to do is I try now to not quite show so many like details of exactly where I am when I am, because more people will find the gym I go to and then do that thing where they look back in time on Google and they're like, oh, like it was a Publix. I knew it was a supermarket. And I'm like, I mean, it was. I could have told you that, but also it's a little bit creepy you put this much time because I didn't tell you the address, right? So you found it and then you looked back in time, right? And it's like, it's a very interesting, on the one hand, it's humbling and it's motivating that people are recognizing me in real life. And it's, again, I've never had a negative experience. I want to make that clear. It's been nothing but positive in the real world, and people are definitely recognizing me. On the other hand, it is a little bit concerning, especially my fiance moved in, we're getting married, and we were talking about like, what should I put online, but I don't want people to show up at my wedding, right? Right? So, it's one of those things where it's been incredibly positive so far, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, if this really turns into something and more people see me, I might have to, like not post pictures of my house or, things of that nature. And the 99% you mentioned is positive. It's probably 99.9%. One thing that I thought initially, just from my opinion and my general knowledge of social media, or I guess I should say its reputation, was that there was going to be tons and tons of trolls, especially on Twitter, because let's be honest, like Instagram is far more like positive, maybe unrealistic, but like people are really positive on Instagram. Again, like I don't know how much of it's real or fake, but they're really positive. On Twitter though, it's no, that's not the reputation it has. So I was expecting a lot of trolls, especially on Twitter or X. I've gotten a few of them, but very, very few of them. The thing I get more often is anti-Semitism, just because I am Jewish. And honestly, I don't really talk about being Jewish very much. It's not like part of my content that much. I mean, like, everyone's aware of it, but like, it's like, I'm not trying to be like a Jewish influencer or content creator or anything of that nature. So it happens. Both the trolling and the anti-Semitism is very rare. And the block feature on both ones I use all the time. I at the beginning I used the block feature less because I didn't want to block people, and now I block with as much gusto as I can. But to be honest, like it does stay with you, right? Like that one guy who makes a comment that he can't see any weight loss, or he doesn't think I'm working out hard enough. That does stay with you, and it's something that I've had to grow a thicker skin on over the last year, and I've had to remind myself that 99.9 or 99.8% of all the interactions, which is hundreds of thousands of interactions at this point, right? Maybe millions, have been positive. And this few comments I get occasionally, always from anonymous accounts, they don't reflect what I have seen on my time on social media, and they don't reflect most of the feedback I've gotten on social media from followers and people who interact with me. So again, very, very surprisingly positive in my opinion compared to what I was expecting. And the few negative interactions I have, I block often, and I try to see the bigger picture, zoom out, not lose the forest through the trees, as it were. But like, it is something that I do think content creators and people in general should be aware of. You will get those negative comments every now and then, and they will stay with you more than the positive ones do, more than 100 positive ones do. And so it is important to recognize that going in, so you're not caught off guard.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to talk about it quickly, and for a couple kind of connections that I have. Like Shane Wally is someone that has become a social media friend over the years. And I interviewed him when I used to do IG Live interviews, and we're going to do a podcast episode soon. But he's someone that I remember 3 years ago, maybe, saying, like, if you ever need someone to talk with, just send voice notes or whatever, reach out anytime, because I have not blown up on social media at all. And I'm somewhat grateful for it. In the very first episode of this podcast, I interviewed Buster Shear, who now has millions of followers, but it was a very, very slow, patient growth. And he referenced the fact that he is grateful for how slow that growth was because he didn't have to deal with all of these challenges in a very short period of time when maybe he wasn't ready for it. You know, you mentioned you're being 31, I'm 38. Like, I'm plenty ready and mature to take on the trolls and things like that. Whereas I don't think 15 years ago I would have been. So I'm somewhat grateful for the slow growth as well. But I was also listening to Tim Ferriss talk the other day about how grateful he was that he never published his podcast on YouTube. And he said because he was at least somewhat unrecognizable when he would go out in public. And he said that's something that he didn't think of. It's just because people didn't make video podcasts at the time. But even with an audio-only podcast, people will go do the research to find out where he is, what he looks like, obviously, and go kind of approach him and things like that, which, you know, again, 99% of the time it's fine. But for me, I often think about the fact that I have 2 little kids and always trying to wonder, you know, how much do I want to post? And in just the last week alone, for me, again, relatively small social following in terms of metrics, but a decent podcast, but not local to here at all. And 2 people recognized me within 1 week in public. And it made me think of, like, I'm wearing these 20-year-old and 1 shorts and sandals with flip-flops. It was somebody posted this picture and, you know, it was like, hey, you know, found the host of JKL at the grocery store, like you said, buying chicken, like in the middle of the night. It's like, and it makes you think, right? And kind of reflect, because I think that notoriety used to come only with celebrities who did have PR firms. And now, as every day, you know, Joe's, so to speak, we're growing these followings. And so I do think it's a really important thing to touch on. And then the last kind of thing that I think is valuable too is as you grow, I know that it's hard for people to figure out how much do you engage with, you know, replies, comments, DMs, and how much time do you spend in the time suck of social media when I'm sure you have priorities like your weight loss, your exercise, your nutrition, your family, your work. So how do you personally deal with the productivity of that?
Yeah, I was just going to post about this actually. So apparently Twitter has rolled out this new page where you can look at analytics. And honestly, I hadn't really looked at analytics until like they rolled this out a few weeks ago. And now I'm looking at it more. And according to it on Twitter, I get 9,000 comments per week. That's been my average. So I don't get back to all of them. I don't get back to half of them. I'm not even sure I get back to 10% of them. But generally what I do on Twitter now is I post something, and then if I have time for like the first 30 to 60 minutes after that, I'll respond to everyone who is responding to me and like, you know, putting some substance into it, right? They're just like hitting like the fire emoji 3 times. Probably not going to, right? But if they're doing something, or I will probably respond. And then I probably don't. I probably move on. Now with Instagram and Threads, because I have a much smaller footprint there, and I don't get 9,000 comments a week on theirs, not even 10% of that, I respond to pretty much all of them, all the comments that will come in say like the first day. Since I probably only post on Instagram 5 or 6 times a week, I'll probably respond to 80 to 90% of those comments, and same with Threads at this point, just because I'm still trying to figure out what it is. On TikTok, sometimes I forget to even log into that for days. So TikTok, you're not gonna hear from me, to be honest. It's the one I'm most disconnected from, and I understand the least. Although I understand this huge growth potential there, I just it's never clicked with me. And then Facebook, I'm trying to get myself. I just hit 1,000 followers on Facebook, which is fairly small, but at the same time, I didn't even know people still used it. So I'm trying to get myself to go back over there and spend some time there. But my 2 main ones are Twitter, which I give each post maybe an hour of responses, and Instagram, which I do try to respond to 80 to 90% of the comments, because again, I'm only posting there once a day, 5, maybe 10 posts per week at absolute tops. And then with the DMs, I'm just way behind on them, to be honest. Like, most of the DMs are just people saying congratulations or asking questions that I've answered a million times. And just because of the volume of messages I get, I can't get back to them. So again, if it's someone who has a show or has something interesting to say, or like when you reached out, that I'll respond to that. But even then, it's probably, days delayed. And I used to feel really bad about it, and I still sort of do. But at the same time, I do work full time, and my main goal is my weight loss and my mental health improvements, right? And I got in June, or I got engaged, so now that's a whole thing going on, right? So there are legitimately things that come well before getting back to Twitter comments. And I try not to feel bad about it, but I do post. I also post on Twitter and on Threads now, like just basically apologies. Just like, I know everyone's aware of it, but I just like to keep saying it. Like, I get a ton of DMs. I leave my DMs open. I get a ton of comments. I don't have any restrictions on who can comment, but like, I just can't get back to everybody. And it's, again, never something I thought I would have to deal with, but it is. And again, it's certainly been a learning curve, especially over the last 5 or 6 months when the volume has really picked up.
Yeah, it's something that people who don't create and only consume can't relate to at all. And I've had some very brief but difficult conversations with people who I know from my personal life who also follow me on social, and then they'll send a message and be like, they literally have said, I had this happen 3 times where you didn't answer my comment or you didn't answer my message. I'm like, it's not scalable and sustainable to the extent where everyone can get a reply.
And the other thing, I don't know if this applies, I guess I mentioned it, sorry to cut you off, but sort of like related to TikTok where I don't log in very much. At this point, I have like 4 or 5 or 6 different platforms that I'm making different content for, or I'm cross-posting content, or I'm trying to figure out how this one's algorithm works and that one's algorithm doesn't work, and I don't know anything about algorithms, right? So who knows how any of them work, but I can't give the equal attention to all, or I wouldn't have time for the rest of my life, right? So I have tried to prioritize certain things and deprioritize certain other things, like TikTok, right? Just, again, like, it's not anything I get personal against. It's just I don't seem to have an audience there, and it's the one I understand the least, and therefore I just don't log in as much. And I know there are a few people who will comment on every single thing I post on TikTok, and I feel bad about it, but I'm sure my fiance would say I spend too much time as it is on social media, so I can't pick up a TikTok addiction on top of all that.
Yeah, it definitely does relate. Like our podcast page has a lot of followers on the Facebook page, and that's probably where I get the most messages, but they are the most spammy, random, just fire emojis, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of fire emojis, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I will reply if it's prayer hands, heart, rocket ship, ghost, fire emoji, explosion, then maybe I'll reply.
Yeah.
But I get a lot of those kind of like spammy messages. And so I don't even have the Messenger app at all for Facebook. I can't even remember the last time I logged into that. It's similar to TikTok for you and all those things. But for me, for sure, I prioritize Twitter and Instagram. Those are the 2 that I fall into. Coincidental that you and I both feel that way. So it works out. I know we've talked a long time about social media. I think that was a really important thing to discuss, though, because that is the massive difference that really seems to have, like you said, sparked the success this time around. You shared that you didn't have success and you tried a bunch of times before. That's a hard thing to summarize. I don't know how long ago it was, but if you could kind of talk about those other attempts and what the history was for your journey.
Yeah, for sure. So I started gaining weight after I graduated college. I probably graduated college in the low 200s. So I needed to lose weight, but I needed to lose like maybe 20 or 25 pounds, not 200 or 250 pounds. And then that would have been in 2014. And then by 2022, last year, I was up above 400 pounds. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but I flew for the first time since the pandemic last May, and I needed a seatbelt extender, which was the first time that had happened, and also one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. And then I got back from that flight, and I jumped on my scale at home to see, I was obviously a bigger guy. I'd been a bigger guy for a long time, but I never needed a seatbelt extension before. But I also hadn't flown in 2+ years because of COVID, because of the pandemic. So I got on the scale, and they gave me an error message. But I had just moved into this house, and so I thought the scale must be broken. It's just from Amazon. I'll get a new one, Prime. It'll be here in a day or 2. And then when I went to bed that night, I wondered if the scale might have maximum weight that I might be over, and perhaps that was why it was giving me an error message. So I got up the next morning, and it indeed had a 400-pound maximum weight. And so when that new second scale came, which is actually the one I'm still using, I got the same error message on it. So those two things were the triggering moments for me that have been last June to start this journey. And for the first 4 weeks, from June 1st to June 29th of last year, I continued to get an error message on the scale. And it wasn't until June 29th of 2022 that I saw 399.9, which for most people is not much of a victory because that's 400 pounds. But for me, that was four very hard weeks. And I take that as my starting weight because, again, I'm not exactly sure what I started at 4 weeks before then. And the prior attempts at this weight loss had all been unsuccessful, obviously, because I got up to over 400 pounds. But I'd always tried to do them myself. I'd always tried to do some fad diet, some extreme exercise, some crash diet. I'd always tried to tackle it, as an island. I never involved a doctor, where I started going to see the doctor for the first time, in, 10 years last year, and got my blood work done, and then got it done again this January, and I'll get it done again this fall, just to make sure. Again, the scale is important, but there's also blood work. There's also how you feel, how you look. So I wanted to make sure I had all my bases covered. And instead of doing a crash diet or a fad diet or the Biggest Loser type, 4 or 5 hours of exercise a day, I wanted to, focus more on exercise that I might enjoy. I wanted to focus on food that I might enjoy, as opposed to what I had done in the past, which was just sort of like endless cardio and endless salads. And don't get me wrong, I was in extreme caloric deficit. I definitely lost 10, 20, 30, 40 pounds pretty rapidly, but it would eventually get miserable and I would fall off the wagon and gain all the way back. So the difference in approach in both diet and exercise, and adding in the social media, the accountability, were sort of the big things that I did differently this time around, along with, going to the doctor. And then, at least 13, 14 months in, so far, so good.
And the social media one, I think we really tackled that quite thoroughly. When it comes to, let's just pick one, you can pick diet or exercise. What is the system that you ended up following, and has that evolved in the last year?
So one of the issues when I first started this journey was that you can find experts or proclaimed experts on the internet who will tell you exact polar opposites, and they look good and they have good credentials and they have lots of people who do it. And so I ran into this issue of, paralysis by analysis, because I just wasn't sure what to do. And so originally what I figured out was, even though I wasn't sure what to do, I was sure what not to do. Right? I knew that eating that much junk food, fast food, soda, alcohol, things of that nature had gotten me up to over 400 pounds. So the first thing I did was I cut out junk food, fast food, stopped drinking my calories, processed and packaged food, started to shop around the perimeter of the grocery store more than the middle of the grocery store. And what that basically left me with was a lot of vegetables, some fruit, and a lot of meat and water to drink. So what I came to was a low-carb diet generally seemed to work for me. I don't do no carbs or anything extreme, but a generally low-carb diet that has cut out even the low-carb products that are more processed and packaged, and focusing mostly on vegetables, on meat, on fruit, on water. That has been what I have come to. And over time, I have basically tightened up on it. As I lose weight, it gets more difficult to continue losing weight. So I have tightened up on it a little bit, but at the same time, I don't want it to be unsustainable. I don't want to be miserable doing it, and I don't want it to be something that when I hit my goal weight, I stop doing it, all of a sudden I gain all of the weight back. So I've tightened down a bit. Cut out some of the more high sugar fruits, for example. And I used to drink a lot of the zero calorie energy drinks, and I still like them. But I have cut out as much as I can from them, and I cut out as many artificial sweeteners as I can as well. While again, understanding I still have to have a social life, still have to have a corporate life, still have to have an academic life, still have to see family and friends. And when I'm eating those meals with them, I will have more, normal food. And, I'm not one of those people who only eats steak or only eats vegetables. I don't think that's very real world. I don't think that's particularly sustainable. And then in terms of exercise, I walked into the gym last year at over 400 pounds, having never been a member of a gym, never worked out, having absolutely no idea what to do. And I basically, for months, I just walked on the treadmill, not even ran. Or as I got comfortable with the gym, as that intimidation went down, as I realized, it was okay to be there and to work on more confidence, and just walking for 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes at over 400 pounds got my heart rate up, got my blood pumping, got me sweating. And that was the most important part there. The problem was walking on the treadmill got boring. And so I did now start to incorporate more machines, more strength training, and more weights. And again, for me, when people ask me about, oh, what diet should you do? What exercise should you do? I don't know, right? I'm not an expert, and I don't know the person asking normally. So the key to me this time that I think makes this journey different than the failed attempts I had before was that I found exercises that I want to come back and do again the next day, which I think is very important. And I found a diet that I can stick to and come back and do the next day. But that diet and that exercises for me are probably not going to be the same for someone else. So usually when people ask, I say, try something. If it doesn't work, try something else. Don't be concerned about tweaking it as you go, and don't be concerned if it's not what other people are doing if you're seeing results. Because again, the best diet is the one that shows results and that you can stick to. And the best exercise is exercise that you want to do again, several times a week.
Yeah, the you can stick to it is super underrated with both. Exercise specifically, I posted that recently. And that was one of my better X's.
They're called, right?
Yeah. Or tweets. Yeah. In that, a lot of people replied and those kinds of things. And I got a couple messages about how do you do that? And I said that I need to turn the gym into a game or almost like a sport. I'm by myself. I always work out by myself in the last 10 years anyways. And I still find ways to gamify it. And so I feel like for me, that's really important. I nodded my head when you said that the walking got boring because I really give it to people who can do steady state cardio. Because I shouldn't say I can't because that's a limiting belief, but it's really hard. And I would rather, so I just choose to find a way to gamify things. Side note, in case I forget, I am an expert in this world. But it's not the brand and the work that I'm building. It's buried beneath all of the stuff that I actually want to work on. So send me a message anytime that you ever want to chat about this stuff. And I will never charge a penny for anything that I used to charge like 5 and 10 grand for. Because, it's just, I'm grateful that we're having this conversation and that we'll be creator friends for life. So if you ever want to talk about those things, feel free.
Absolutely. Yeah. I appreciate that. Yes.
The one thing I'll say that's interesting is I've done that, I don't know, maybe 100 times for people. They kind of wrote a program or done these different things. Within weeks, they feel bad coming around me because they're like, I'm not following it anymore. And my main point is this, like, we need to make it something that you're going to enjoy. So don't take on the 6 days a week, 3 hours a day. So what does your workouts look like right now, though, in terms of, like, let's say if you did a week or whatever?
Yeah. So I wake up early in the morning. I'm a morning person. And when I had evening classes, because I was in grad school and worked full time, the only time I could do it is waking up very early. So I get up between 4 and like 4:20 a.m. Monday through Friday. The first thing I do is go to the gym, because if I waited any later, even to like 7 or say to lunch, I could make excuses to not go to the gym. So I do it first thing. I make it a priority. And when I get there, I do usually some like, either I'm trying a new strength training machine or I'm doing something I saw online with free weights, and then I will try to do some cardio as well, maybe 20 to 30 minutes of cardio, and I rarely touch the treadmill anymore. And then again, at this point in time with strength training and with the weights, I'm focusing more on form and reps on a light weight than I am instead of, maxing out any type of weight or ego lifting at that point. I am still in the 280 pound range. So mostly if I'm doing anywhere from 40 to 60 minutes in the gym 5 days a week in the early morning, as long as I keep doing something, and I try to break up like half of that as cardio and half of that as other types of working out, then I will get myself to a point where I am sweating. I feel like I've had a good workout, and I feel like I've burned some calories. But I do say this quite often, that it's my weight loss journey has probably been 90% diet and maybe 10% exercise. So, right, like the number of calories I burn in the gym in less than an hour or 5 days a week of sort of moderate exercise is nothing compared to what I could eat or couldn't eat, right, depending on if I have my diet locked down. And so I make sure, like, I post a lot of gym selfies because I'm in the gym 5 or 6 days a week, and I post a lot of workout videos now because people want to see them. But the diet is far more critical than the exercise. And to be honest, I keep my exercise kind of moderate. Exercise for me is a huge mental health boost. It gives me a lot of positivity. It gives me a lot of optimism, makes me feel great when I walk out of the gym after, 30, 40, 50 minutes and the sun still hasn't risen and I've already crushed a workout. That makes me feel very good, but I still am not sure I actually burned, that many calories in the grand scheme of things.
Right. And I would add, but, or therefore, you eat better. And I could ask that as like a rhetorical question almost, but that's another one of those interesting kind of like chicken and egg things I find, that
Very true, yes.
10 minutes of exercise a day probably changes the brain chemistry that goes to make those food decisions at least a tiny bit. I'm making an assumption perhaps, but I feel like that's an underrated benefit of the exercise piece. And you're right.
Absolutely,
people think
yes.
like, oh, if I go exercise
Yes.
like crazy, then my fitness journey is heading where I want it to in terms of how I want to look or how I want to feel or whatever. And then they don't eat well. It's like, it's like breaking even. It's what's the saying? Stepping over $100 bills to grab a $5 bill or whatever. It just doesn't make sense.
And for whatever reason, the content world, at least the one I'm in, gets a lot more traction with gym selfies, with workout videos, so that I think more people have seen me in the gym than have seen any of my food or whatever. So that's one of the reasons I just reinforce it is like, yes, like from a content perspective, the gym selfies, the exercising video, even just talking about going to the gym, people are really into it. And I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it's just the niche I stumbled into. But from a weight loss perspective and a health perspective, the diet has been far more critical just in terms of losing the pounds. They obviously are intertwined and go together and reinforce each other a whole lot. But I just want to be able to make it clear that the kitchen is more important than the gym so far in my journey.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad we touched on those as well as the social media stuff, because when I was a personal trainer in an actual gym, I was very close with my clients, so they would open up and talk about things. And I remember being surprised the first time, but then it happened so many times where clients wouldn't show up for a workout. The policy at the gym where we were at for personal training, and I was high end, it was like over $100 an hour. Like it wasn't like my decision, like, oh no, you're not going to be charged, because it was in my calendar and 50% of it went to Mr. Boss. So you're getting charged if you don't show up for workouts. What was wild was I had multiple clients who would be in the parking lot and still not come through the doors to come down the stairs to come to the workout. But they drove to the gym, they got their bag all together, they probably thought about it the night before and were somewhat excited, but they weren't able to overcome the anxiety and adversity of walking in to the gym, and they would rather lose the $100 and just drive home or wherever they drove to. And they would open up about that later on. So a lot of times we were really working on mindset stuff. So I really appreciate you sharing all of this. We'll have to drop the mics soon. But one other thought that I wanted to ask you about, because I feel like pointing people towards resources or influences or other things that still inspire you can be helpful. So we know Arnold was an influence for you. I'm sure there are others. Is there anyone or like a book or sites that you use or references or influences, mentors and heroes that you look up to as you continue on this journey?
Yeah, so one of them I'll mention. There's a lot of people online that I have gotten various levels of, support and resources from. I'll mention two of them actually. One of them is Obese to Beast, who is fairly well known in the community. I think he lost 175, 180 pounds almost 10 years ago. He's roughly my age. He has a big YouTube presence. I think he has like 750,000 followers, and he's on Instagram as well. And the key that I like about his content is he feels very authentic. He's, very imperfect like we all are. And he has maintained that weight loss now for at least 5 years, maybe even 10 years. And so that's one of the things that I'm starting to think about is how do I transition to maintaining this, sometime next year when I do get down to hopefully the weight I want to be at. And the other one for me being in sort of the low carb space, but trying to avoid all of like the fads and all the weird stuff that you just inevitably find on the internet. There's a guy named Nick Norwich. He's actually younger than me, but a Harvard medical student who has done a lot of work in the low carb community. And so between the two of them, one is like personal experience, one has more an academic background. But I go to them repeatedly when I need either of those two things. But in general, I have found, especially on Twitter, surprisingly, the gym fitness and weight loss community to be far more accepting and inclusive and open-minded than I initially expected. And one of the things that if I could go back and tell 400 plus pound Dave is just how much everyone in those communities wants to help and wants you to succeed. And will genuinely help you if you reach out and ask for help about an exercise, about cooking, about weight loss tips. I wish 400-pound past Dave had realized that earlier, and it continues to be an impressively positive part of my journey.
And better now than never, for sure. I appreciate you naming them by name because I feel like a lot of times we don't give flowers and props to people until it's too late. And so
Absolutely.
I really think that's, I'm sure they would really appreciate it, that's for sure. And it's just, again, important to show that even though we start to grow on our own journeys as creators and the ability to help people, there's still, we are teaching, we are learning from people, and it kind of becomes this constellation of creators supporting each other.
Absolutely,
so
yes.
That's awesome. What's the long-term goal for you, whether it's fitness and health or the content creator stuff? If we're keeping that moon in the window, what is it?
So I'd like to get under 200 pounds. So I'd like to lose more than 200 pounds in 2 years or less, which would be half my starting weight of 399.9 and get me under 200 pounds, which is somewhere where I was between high school and college. And then at that point, I'll reassess, look at my blood work, how I feel. Ideally, I think I should probably be, 10, 20 pounds less than that. But we'll see there. That's my first big weight loss goal, as it were. And then in terms of the content creation, I don't have a manager or a PR firm, and there wasn't really a strategy other than documenting my journey. And I think that's the way it will stay until I hit that weight loss goal, because I'm still, learning and exploring, and I'll continue to do that and probably focus more on video content just so I get more confident on camera and hopefully my content quality improves. And then once I'm able to say, I've lost more than 50% of my body weight, I'm down 200 plus pounds, maybe I do have some, expertise or at least experience in doing this, perhaps I would move beyond just a part-time thing on the side. But really, the focus has to be the health and the weight loss first, and the social media and content creation second.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wouldn't want to put you on the spot and say, do you want to be a full-time creator and like fitness inspirer and all these kinds of things? I do know I've seen you post like that you aren't an influencer and you aren't, the various things that we get called online.
Yeah.
On the flip of that, the devil's advocate side of it is that you are kind of all of those things too, because you're very much influencing people.
Yes.
And I think that's the best way to handle it, is to live in the moment and just see what comes. So I'll be cheering you on no matter what.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. So I'll ask the wrap-up theme questions, and then if we just had so much fun, we could always run it back in the future. But the first one is, what's one thing that you are learning right now? It may be off-brand from all of this stuff, so to speak, or anything that you are currently actively learning right now.
The big thing I'm learning right now, and it is sort of pretty on brand, is the video stuff. I'm initially, when I was making video content, I didn't edit it at all. So the reason I mentioned auto captioning earlier is because I've just started digging into the features of how to actually edit videos. My first videos, almost all of them, were just like a single cut of me like talking to a camera or working out, and I didn't clip them, I didn't put overlays, I didn't add text or titles, I didn't subtitle them, I didn't do anything. And so I've now tried to move beyond that and figure out how to actually edit videos. I feel like that's where most of social media is or is going. And it also is great for me for in terms of documentation and accountability to have more videos. And so one thing I'm actively learning every day is when I do edit those little videos, what new features can I try out in CapCut, the app I use, and I also use that on my computer as well, just to make myself, if potentially one day content creation does become more of my life, right, I would like to feel confident and comfortable with video content.
Filmmaking is by far one of my biggest hobbies. I just love it. So I'm sure you'll really enjoy it too. I've never seen anyone not love it. If you were to choose one piece of advice for the next generation, like you have so many great things to share, but if you could only really capture one and pass that along, what would it be?
Try things. Whether it's different diets, different exercises, different types of content creation, different platforms, different careers, different things in academia and education, different parts of the world to live in, try things. I see a lot of negativity, and I don't know what we call them, doomers online, and there's so many opportunities out there. There's so much positivity. There's so much you can do with technology that's just constantly getting crazier and crazier, that I try as many things as you can and see what you like and see what works.
Amazing. And now you get to be the podcaster. I give you the microphone. You come up with a question. Just go with your gut, I suppose. And if something on these topics are, again, completely random, it doesn't matter to me, but you were to ask me a question, what would that question be?
Well, it's going to be on topic, I think, because you do have a background in a lot of what I'm doing. What's the major pitfall or the major thing you would recommend avoiding or overcoming that you saw in your past role in the gym that your clients, that threw them off or they stumbled over, that you could give me to try to avoid? I'm sort of transitioning from more casual workout to actually getting more intense in the gym. And, I do feel like there may be some obvious things that I should try to avoid or make sure I don't get hung up on.
Yeah, a few things come to mind. And because we talked about the importance of nutrition, I'll just go there first quickly. I feel like it's a bit cliche, but building the habits and systems around nutrition is so much more important and sustainable than just like willpower or trying to make rules for yourself that don't have systems underneath them. And a quick example is clients or like all this stuff applies to me too. It's just on a different situation, right? Again, it's more about health and not a weight loss situation, but I love ice cream. So for me, if I have ice cream in the freezer gets eaten, right? It could be an entire tub of ice cream. I will pay a premium, like 66% on the dollar, to go to the ice cream store and just get one serving of ice cream with my kids and still eat ice cream. I'm paying 4 times as much for it. But that relates to everything to me, right? Any kind of like food that we don't want to be part of our diet, not having it in the home, and then having the food we do want. And that sounds so simple, but we asked about pitfalls. It's like that can come about from one grocery trip in 2 months from now, where it's like, okay, I got my ice cream now, and now I'm only allowed to eat this and portion it out. And it's like, it's so hard. Whereas if it's not in the home, it's so much more sustainable. That connects to relationship things, because a lot of times it'd be like, well, yeah, but my wife likes ice cream. It's like, okay, so having the ongoing dialogue, communication, and making, you said it earlier, that we're not on islands. It's like a team effort, right? Being on board with these things, which may mean that, people need to pony up the money to go to the ice cream shop because it's more expensive to get the cone as opposed to the bowl at home. But whatever. Anyways, I think habits and systems around the eating is so much more important. Meal prep comes to mind, which is something that I've actually gotten better at again recently, because I fell off big time, and I was talking to a friend about how hard nutrition is because there's so much conflicting information out there. Anyways, habits and systems around nutrition, I think, is the first one. And then in the gym, it's tricky.
Agreed.
But I feel like you mentioned it earlier too, avoiding boredom right before you're about to get bored. And so a lot of times we'll write like a 6-week workout program. At the 3.5 week point, our body's telling us that we're not as excited to do these workouts, right? And that goes in the macro of like a 6-week program or 3-month program or whatever. It also goes in the micro, like if you find it more enjoyable to do 35 minutes, then don't write something up that takes an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, that is hard.
Those are the types of things I feel like planning for the workouts. But again, making sure that the program is changed often enough so that you're not getting bored or something to that effect, right? Like I mentioned gamifying it earlier. Yesterday, I went to the gym and I made like a little circuit for myself, which included the like CrossFit assault bike, pushing a sled, and doing some jump rope. And so those 3 circuits take me about, like, I was doing them for like 20 seconds each. So that's 60 seconds, and then a minute off. And so that every minute on the minute, the EMOM thing. So that workout is roughly 20 minutes. Like it was way more than enough. And at the 10-minute mark, I almost was like, okay, that's probably good enough. So doing things like that versus some people will feel like they need to work up to being able to ride the bike for an hour and a half or something like that. So I used to build little like circuits and things with my clients all the time. We would take like, and one was a very big weight loss journey in her case. And I was so proud to work with her over the 2 years. We would do things like take like a fireman or a police training like obstacle course. And then we would really simplify it down. You know, she's not wearing a weight vest and having to jump over this box. It's like, but we would use that foundation of the obstacle course, and then we would tailor it to whatever things she could do. And the last thing I'll say that ties into that is really modifying everything so that they're specific to your own abilities and pushing each of those things. But it sounds like you're really well on your way to doing that. And maybe an accountability person as you grow in confidence and abilities too. You'll maybe find that you want to work out with someone else and push each other, because competition can be healthy once you get to a certain point. Yeah.
Absolutely. Fully agree.
Well, I will ask the fun and final mic drop question, and that's just
Sure.
why, that's a fun part of it, why and where can people find you online?
I am Dave E. Danna on Twitter, on Instagram, I'm David E. Danna, and I think I'm Dave E. Danna on everywhere else, but I'm the guy posting gym selfies at Planet Fitness. Before the sun rises every morning, that's me.
It's awesome. I really appreciate it. Like I said at the top, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
JKL listeners, thank you so much for being here. I'm having a ton of fun making these episodes. I've had to really bounce back from a lot of adversity and be resilient myself to keep going with the show in some ways. So I just really appreciate you taking them in, and I hope they're getting better and better as we keep going. It would mean the world if you pass it along to friends or family that you think might also appreciate the show. And thank you to our guest today, Dave. If you're looking for inspiration when it comes to your own wild and crazy goals, especially if they're in the world of wellness, he's an incredible person to follow. But also, I know that he could use your support still too. He still has a ton of work to put in, so let's all go cheer him on. As always, we love getting your DMs, comments about the show. If you have any input or guests, topics that you want us to talk about, please don't be shy, just let us know. Until the next episode, all the best, and remember, just keep learning.